Okay, in this video I'm looking at the Matchday series of games. Now there are actually three. Most people think that there's two. There's Matchday, the original by John Rittman and Chris Clark from 1984. That was followed with International Matchday a couple of years later, which was a Spectrum 128K title, which was in effect the same as Matchday, but with international teams and some 128K music. And then in 1987, John Rittman and Bernie Drummond wowed us all with Matchday 2. Fantastic games. Now, I love all the Matchday games. Going back to the very first one, me and my mates used to play Matchday 2-player. We used to play Barbarian, Target Renegade, Grisor, Xeno, but today, you know, this is the Matchday ones are the ones that got the most play from us. So we're starting at the original Matchday, and we're just going to go through the control setup, etc. Now you can do various things with Matchday. You can change the team names, for example. There's some. I wonder who low-key players are named after. Perhaps John Rittman ever watches this video. He can shed some light on who some of these teams are named after. Obviously, Rittman Rovers and Clark PR are after Mr. Rittman and Mr. Clark themselves. But the others, I wonder about. So we can set the options for the match length, etc., and the keyboard controls, etc. We need to swap those around. Bit of a tricky key select panel here, but it can be done. It's obviously, you know, the control is laid out as the original 48K rubber key Spectrum keyboard, and it takes a little bit time. I am playing this on a laptop through emulation. It takes a little bit of time to correlate the keys of the laptop with the Spectrum ones. Better get there in the end. Now, there hadn't been sort of any really decent football games up until this point that I certainly on the Spectrum. I mean, Arctic had released World Cup, which wasn't very good at all, and this was the first one on the sort of Spectrum that was in any way, shape, or form playable. Now, I love this. Match of the Day beeper rendition. As you can hear, it's a bit grinding, but that was the technology they had to play with at the time. Now you can also change the pitch colours, etc., and the team colours. Obviously, the Spectrum is not very good at multiple colours on the screen, and quite a novel way of telling you which player you are controlling is that his socks will change colour as opposed to any kind of arrows or anything else. If you see a player with different colour socks to the rest of your team, although that wasn't unusual in Sunday and Saturday pub leagues, in Matchday it means that's the player that you control. Now, you have only really got you know, a limited control range in this game. You can't jump, you can't header, there's no penalties or free kicks. There's no penalties or free kicks in any of the Matchday games. Matchday 2, when I get to that, introduced a whole raft of improvements in relation to jumping and the power of the shots and passes, etc. You only have the one level, one power level in Matchday. Now, we used to play this tons, like I said, and you know, it used to be so much fun. Get a load of mates around your house and have a sort of a mini competition going and see who would win. Nowadays, it's certainly one of the better games on the Specky. The Spectrum was plagued with bad football games. I mentioned World Cup earlier. US Gold famously released that as World Cup Carnival. You know, absolute pile of shit in 1986 that was. And I already reviewed Pete Shilton's Handball Marathon a few videos back. That one god awful as well. Perhaps the worst one one that equals a World Cup for sheer poorness of you know, can't understand how they could release a game that was so poor was Peter Beardsley's International Football. I'm not going to go near that one. I do own it from back in the day, and I played it for a grand total of about 20 minutes, then realised it was shit. And, oh, the goalie's having a bit of a wondrous moment there. Yeah, if you are able to get another player, try having a two-player match day-a-thon. It really is good fun. So we're going to let this segment of match day play out, and then we'll move on to the second of the 3 games. Oh, I forgot I scored a goal there. Yes. He shoots, he scores. Doesn't happen very often. Trust me on that one. So in a second this video is going to end, and we will move on to International Match Day. Now, International Match Day was developed specifically for the 1 to 8 ZX Spectrum, and it is in essence identical to the original Match Day. Now, the only difference is that the teams are international teams, but you can rename them. So it is in effect exactly the same game, with a very nice rendition of the Match of the Day theme playing over the intro to the actual game itself. Once you've selected to get into it. Now, just setting up the controls again quickly. Good old QAOPM. Where would we be without them, eh? Just change it to a slightly more visible colour system. So there we had the 128K rendition of the Match of the Day theme. Really nice. And also there's some crowd noises, etc. In this version. Now, as I said, it's a John Rittman, Chris Clark game. Now, John Rittman, I think we all know as one of the Spectrum programming gods, behind games like Bear Bother, Namtir Raiders, Match Day, International Match Day, Match Day 2, and Batman, Head Over Heels, and of course they also did the Game Boy game, or he also was part of the team that did the Game Boy game Monster Max. Now, from Match Day 2 onwards, Match Day 2, Batman, Head Over Heels, etc. Mr. Rittman programmed those alongside Bernie Drummond. Now, I've spoken with Bernie on Facebook about this, and it seems that they were both looking to develop an arcade version of Match Day. Now, it never came to fruition, that idea, but what a great idea that would have been. I wonder how many 10p's that would have swallowed back in the day. I just wonder if there's any way the idea can be resurrected somehow. It would be great. I used to love playing football games in the arcade. Tecmo World Cup and Taito Kick and Run, I suppose, tie for my equal favourites on the arcade platforms. I spent an awful lot of 10p's and 20p's in those 2 games, and used to spend hours when I should have been in the pub getting pissed, actually playing the game in the corner. The Cock pub next to Highbury Instant Tube Station had Tecmo World Cup as well as hard driving, and you know, you could just disappear or lose yourself for hours. It was good, especially if it was your round, to just go and hide over by the arcade machines. But hey ho. So this is International Match Day. As you can see, this is, like I said, I mean, it's the same game. It's just got some 128 bells and whistles going on, soundtrack wise, etc. So just going to let this little segment play out. So here we are. We're now at the final game in the series, Match Day 2 from 1987. Easily the best of the three. Now look at the style of the sort of console at the front, the options menus, etc. They very reminiscent of the options menus for Head Over Heels and Batman, I find. Seeing as it's the same team behind those two games, that's not you know, not that much of a problem. It's quite understandable. I mean, it looks nice. Now, the difference, there is a graphical difference. The players are more squat and better defined in Match Day 2 than in the other games. And there's a lot more. Yeah, I'm going to play Spectrum Forever. See what kind of joy I have against them. There's a lot more to do in this game. You can have cup competitions, and you can there's also a league mode that you can play out, which you can also save and come back to at any time. Now, as again, with the other games, it's a cracking two-player game, and what Match Day 2 adds is a power bar and a power meter to allow you to vary the strength of your shots or passes, etc., and also allows you to perform back heels. Now, I've turned the back heel facility off in this video because it gets to be a pain in the arse sometimes, especially when you're as woefully inept at game playing as I am. It can be through on goal, clean through on goal, totally forget to check out what's going on in the power bar up the top there, and go to shoot and end up back heeling the ball back to a defender. Now, it makes for some comedy moments. But you can also jump in this game as well, so you can score headed goals. In the other Match Day games, you could score headed goals, but it depended, you know, it relied on the ball hitting your player on the head as he was moving. If it wasn't actually a real header, you know, you couldn't make the player jump for it. Now, this was an incredibly successful game. A lot of people say that Emlyn Hughes Soccer is better than it. I would sit on the fence on that one. I like both games. I think this one's a bit easier to pick up and play. And I was always a Match Day fan anyway, so I'm going to be a slightly more Match Day biased, although I recognise that Emlyn Hughes is a great game. Peter Beardsley is not, though, but I've already mentioned that and I can't keep going on about it. Now, again, a great two-player game to be had here. I'm playing against the Welsh Wizards, Spectrum Forever, and I've started off fairly strongly, but they've come roaring out the blocks. I think I must have Tony Adams in defence there. You see the way he read that? Quite magical. He's got gold in his boots. Again, try hunting down Match Day 2 if you have it in your collection and you're able to play it two-player. Grab a friend and, you know, hold them hostage and tell them they're not leaving until they've played this game. because you're going to have a lot of fun with it, especially if you don't know the game at all. Now, from the outside looking in, if you are new to the Spectrum, you might look at this and think, God, that's really slow, etc. And you know, compared to what's around nowadays, it is. But back in the day, this was brilliant. A football game that played football and played it well and looked good, and you know, actually made you want to play it, as opposed to turn it off as soon as you've loaded it up, like some of the other crap games that I mentioned. So the only reason I've done this matchday series of videos is it's FA Cup semi-final weekend. Crystal Palace are beating Watford 2-1 at the moment, and to be honest, I've turned the TV off because I can't listen to any more of Glenn Hoddle or Steve Manaman waffling on. God, for those two drunk. But hey ho. I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, it's just to show you the games in action, to perhaps pique your interest if you want to go and check them out yourselves. I hope the remainder of your Sunday is great. I hope you have a good week coming up ahead of you. Until my next videos next week, I will bid you good day. Thanks very much for watching, and thanks very much for all your support. Bye bye.